What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Draft Night. We have a special guest appearance, and we'll introduce him in a second. I want to thank everybody who's listened over the last several weeks since we've started this. We've officially eclipsed the 1 month mark of our maiden voyage within this podcast, and the response has been great. So thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. We had an extra long break between this episode and our last episode because I took a around the country, around the world trip to Japan. And now I'm back. I did catch some sort of sickness on the way home though. So my voice a little worse for wear. So we'll be all right. And we'll just muddle through. So everybody please be kind. Like I said, we've got our first guest, Brad Hogan with Hogan Legal. Everybody say hi, Brad. Brad, please give us 30 seconds. Tell us about you and your business.
Yeah, my name is Brad Hogan. I am an attorney. I work here in North Texas with business owners and entrepreneurs, help them get their businesses started, keep their contracts in line, both legally and operationally, so that they can, do their best, grow, and hopefully bring on partners and, get to the point where maybe they're selling their business for a huge profit or something like that. Been doing the lawyer thing for 17 years. Before that, I was on a submarine. That was a lot of fun. Now I'm just a big college basketball thing. So I'm glad to be here and talk about the best 4 days of the year.
Yeah, and we're happy to have you because while Ron and I like college basketball, we're much more proficient on the pro side of the ball. And so we need someone like you to come in and give a little bit of expertise and some better wisdom because I know I can't provide that. And just so everybody knows, Ron may be in and out, maybe a little more quiet than usual this week. He's having some HVAC issues at home. So he is going to be off and on. But you know what? That brings up a good point as you brought that glass into frame, Ron. Tell us what you're drinking this week.
Yeah, so definitely am a little bit behind on things because of HVAC issues and because I'm an accountant and it's freaking the middle of March, or actually late March. And so we are coming up on the tax deadline and life is just a crazy mess. But because of that, I get to rep our good friends at Rollertown Beer Works again. I'm back I've had a lot of big Germans the last few weeks. So everybody knows what this is now. We've talked about it before. It's just a damn good beer. As the weather warms up, I'll keep drinking them. I had 2 or 3 down at the AC on Friday. Went down to watch the Mavs take on the Chicago Bulls. Yeah. So they got a win down there. And so I was chugging some Roller Towns. And so what can you say? Just damn good beer, damn good brewery. Excited for everything that they're doing. Shout out to Ben and Skin. Shout out to everybody out there in Salina. So
I have a Often Eastsiders beer, Rico Tapache, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a pineapple wine, pineapple juice, 6.8 ABV. So let's find out what she tastes like.
When you get a chance, can we get a close up of that name on there?
Oh my
Tapache.
Yeah, this tastes like a barrel aged apple juice. Is all this tastes like. This is absolutely tasty. It's super light. It's pineapple forward. Like there's some brown sugar flavors. I don't know if I could drink these over and over. I think this might be a one and done sort of beer at a time because it is kind of thick and heavy with how much pineapple syrupy there is to it. But this is definitely a good beer. Very good flavor.
Is it sweet?
Yeah, that's another reason why I think I could do one. It is very, very sweet.
Okay. So maybe to have one by the pool and switch to a lighter seltzer,
High Noons,
light beer, whatever.
Yeah, then go to High Noons. I'm a seltzer girl at the pool, so I'm drinking High Noons and Trulies and anything else. So, all right, well, let's jump into it. It is time for some sports talk. A lot of stuff has happened in the last almost 2 weeks since our last podcast. So let's dive right in with the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody loves America's team, or they hate America's team, but either way, they're talking about the Cowboys, and there's a lot going on. We got the draft coming up, which we'll talk about in a second. But first of all, the biggest news, I think, is once again, every year, it never fails. There's some sort of long-standing contract drama that is with one of our star players, and in this case, it's Micah Parsons. We touched on this a couple weeks ago, but since then, they still haven't done anything. So do they need to extend him now? Do they need to wait till his contract's up? I mean, what makes the most sense here?
You know what I'm going to say, man. Like it's, I rag on the Cowboys every single year because I hate the way that they do these contract negotiations where they get ahead of it. And so it plays out like a circus in the off season. It leads into training camp. It bleeds into the season. it becomes a distraction, right? And then this is the storyline that we're talking about during the draft camp. And so with CeeDee Lamb, we don't know. I don't think that hurts the team. So to me, it seems like they're done in past years, which is frustrating. We're just going to rinse and repeat. And so I hate to see it. I wish for once they'd get ahead of it. But it doesn't really matter at this point. So the Browns got ahead of it with Garrett. They weren't going to reset the market. So I think we had talked originally about it being, $35 million? That's what we had proposed originally. And now I've seen in stories and heard on the radio that now we're talking closer to 40, 41. So, at this point, I'm like, nothing's going to change. Just give him the 40 and let's move on is kind of what I'm thinking. I don't want this to be the story 3 months from now as ready for training camp.
No, I agree completely. And because Garrett, Crosby, Bosa, they all got their deals. They're all locked up. And Parsons is the same conversation with talent. Some might even say he's better. And we talked about this last time we were on the Micah Parsons contract issues. He has to work with other people. He wants better pieces around him. He said he doesn't need a ton of money. So who knows if that's true. Myles Garrett also said something similar, like he was not going to play in Cleveland. He wouldn't do it for $159 million or whatever. So they gave him 160. So everybody's got a number, everybody's got a mentality, but if you don't pay him, you risk him leaving. And if Micah Parsons leaves, what's another generational franchise keystone player to leave the Dallas organization? Who cares? We already had it once this season. Why not have it again? And Brad, you're here just for March Madness, by the way. If you've got any takes, I want you to jump in.
Sure. I think it's really interesting that Ron started with this is right where we're at. And we were here a year ago with the other two star players. And before that, I could go all the way back to the running back from Ohio State that came down here and did so well for a year. And it's every year that the Joneses do it this way. And I don't understand, because you're right. It bleeds into the training camp and it goes right up to Jones just loves being talked about, I think. So.
Well, and that's what it always boils down to is Jerry Jones is a master of publicity and staying in the news cycle. It never fails. No matter what is going on in the league, he finds a way. The Cowboys aren't the most valued franchise in all sports in all the world for no reason. Dude's good at what he does from a marketing standpoint, not so much from the football standpoint, but you know what? That's okay, because he's still going to print money every single year. So moving off of Micah, there have been some other changes. We've had some key signings. One of them is on the running back side. Tony Pollard era is over. So Miles Sanders, which I think we can all agree is somewhat of a retread as a running back. He's here now. Is he an upgrade? Is it a downgrade? Is it just another guy? What's the opinions there?
It's interesting to see the running back position no longer be what it was 10 years ago, because it is just another guy. That's how most teams treat it nowadays,
Understand. I don't know if you have the Sanders contract numbers. So originally they brought in Javonte Williams, right? So they brought him in first, and then we signed Sanders, kind of the running back room. Rico Dowdle, he exits, he signs a deal, and he's gone. Rico Dowdle, he was already here. He understood the system, and once they started doing the second half of the season, he started balling out. The offense kind of switched a little bit, and the ground game really improved markedly. Even with a really questionable O-line, we're good. We're going to move on from Rico, but we're essentially going to bring in Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders and give them more money. I don't get it. Both of those guys are, as you said, retreads. They've been around. Javonte Williams had a devastating injury, and he became terrible in Denver last year. Sanders, he got it taken away by Chuba Hubbard. So I truly don't get it. I guess if you just want to say, okay, we're going to have some depth in the running back room, and then we're going to go draft a guy in a couple weeks, I just keep Dowdle. It's confusing. I don't understand what they're doing here at all.
Yeah, well, the contract, by the way, so Sanders got $1.33 million with $1.03 guaranteed. So, basically entirely guaranteed contract, and then $3 million to Javonte Williams. So you've got two guys for $4 million for the year. So if you're looking from a value prop, that's a damn good deal. That you get a little bit of depth. You get two guys that will be able to bring a little bit of freshness to the backfield. You won't have one guy that's got to be a 3-down back, but neither of these guys are big blockers. Sanders might be able to block a little bit. Javonte maybe a little bit. but they're not blocking backs. And I think to Brad's point, the running back position is really kind of, nobody cares anymore. Like the Ashton Genties of the world are really awesome to watch in college, but there's no reason for those guys to get drafted high and take up that much cap space when you can get a Rico Dowdle like we did that was an undrafted guy that produced over 1,000 yards. I mean, that's a pretty productive running back in my opinion.
But okay, to play the counterpoint though, the Eagles signed Saquon, given the most money in NFL history, and then won the Super Bowl. So does running back matter? I mean, I'd say it matters. It matters in tandem with the offensive line, and if you have one of those elite guys. For the Cowboys, they do not have near the offensive line that the Philadelphia Eagles do, or that any of the top elite teams have. So in our particular case, I agree with what you're saying. I don't think we need to pay up for a top-level running back because we don't have the offensive line to support him.
So to your point about the Eagles and the offensive line, that's one thing you have to keep in mind with the running back. Was Saquon just that good because he's Saquon, or was the offensive line what propelled him to be that good? Not to mention you've got a mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts that can move outside the pocket, who has incredible deep threats. I mean, think about that receiving tandem. They are two of the best wide receivers in the league at their positions, and you've got a great tight end. And then you've got a great defensive line on the other side. So the Eagles were such a complete team, and they showed that in the Super Bowl. They kicked the shit out of the Chiefs in every phase of that game, not because the Chiefs were bad, but because the Eagles were just that good.
They were definitely all around. And that goes back to Ron's initial point. Is it the line or is it the running back? That can't be the running back alone because, Saquon was great, but he didn't do too well in New York, right? So
exactly. No one expected this. And going into there was a lot of heat on the Eagles that deal. But it was just it was something that we hadn't seen in a while. But it paid off. So it ended up being the piece that completed the puzzle for them. I didn't expect when the season started. I didn't see the Eagles as Super Bowl contenders. The way their last season ended and that collapse, he came in and he really changed the culture. Right, he was in the running to set the NFL record. So I do think, the running back, the position matters. It's not as valuable as it once was clearly, right? And we'll get into this when we talk to Ashton and some of the other guys that are going to go high. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think what the Cowboys have is passable. It's confusing to me. Maybe there's more to the story that we'll see on draft day.
Yeah, you're right. The draft is going to really show us what they want to do. But I think the biggest thing and the last thing we can talk about before we move on to the draft is talking about Dak Prescott's game. And number one, if he can stay healthy, because Dak's been at his best when he's got a great running back. And like Ezekiel, they were rookies of the year because they were just that good together. And we also had a great offensive line. But right now, the Cowboys' offensive line is aging. Zach Martin just retired. We don't have a viable center. Our tackles are... Tyler Smith is okay. Tyler Guyton is a complete risk to have out there on the blind side. So I think there's far too many questions right now on that offensive line to suggest that any of these guys will be a good enough back for Dak to produce at the level he has been. Because Dak Prescott also has not been the same since the first leg injury that he had. He's not ran the ball. He has been a throw-first guy. He doesn't scramble outside the pocket really anymore. And so he's become somewhat one-dimensional. So if they don't get a top-tier back, I think we're going to see Dak Prescott making, piss-poor throws again when it matters most.
Very likely. And, that was a devastating injury. And I don't know if his game ever, it's like it's sealed. It's got a ceiling now, right? And without a back, like you said, to run in tandem, and with Martin gone, who knows what the line's going to do? It's clearly degraded over the last 3 years, right? So where are we going to be trying to put together a whole team when, there's those three questions, right? CeeDee Lamb's great, but, can't all go.
It doesn't matter how open he is.
Can't move, right? So,
all right, so let's get into the draft. How much, I know you follow, NCAA basketball. How much are you on the college football side?
I love college football. It's going to be interesting to see the draft this year. I know it's coming up, mid next month or is the end of next month?
NFL draft.
I'm trying to remember if it's the 20th.
The 24-26.
Okay. Yeah, so we have about a month.
And it's gonna be held in Green Bay this year.
Oh, cool. Are there going to be any questions answered between now and then for the Cowboys? Because you said, like we talked about, Micah being an open question. It might last all the way to training camp. So is there going to be a need there? Yeah.
Now, fortunately, I don't think Mike is going to be someone who is going to hold out. He's too much of a team guy that wants to play, wants to compete, and wants to win. So I definitely see him most likely playing, barring something miraculous, some sort of really, really big disagreement with ownership or front office. But even still, I don't suspect that's going to happen. So, all right. So the draft is going to be the end of April. So we're basically a month out. Cowboys have the number 24 pick overall. So the question is, what do they pick? I mean, we just talked about a lot of holes that the Cowboys have. We don't have a backup quarterback anymore. I mean, we got Trey Lance, but Cooper Rush got picked up elsewhere.
Yeah.
And he was a pretty serviceable backup quarterback. Trey Lance has shown that he just doesn't have it. So we need to draft a quarterback at some point. We've got to get some interior linemen drafted. We probably need to work on some linebacking help, definitely some defensive back help because we lost Jordan Lewis. Trayvon Diggs has not been the same since his injury either. There's so many holes in this team. And unless we just have a stellar draft, I don't see much coming out of this year. So number 24, the question is, do they go best player available or do they go on what their highest need is?
Well, at least we have our starters, so maybe Jones won't be too squirrely about picking the brightest thing in the draft. So maybe we will get some quality athletes alongside on the line or something along that line.
Yeah, I saw a report that says the Cowboys might be trying to go after Keenan Allen.
Ooh.
He's old. He's a good route runner, and he's big. I'm not sure they need to go wide receiver because they just signed Kevontae Turpin to a longer deal. And he's a fine gadget guy. He's not a down the field, he's a down the field threat, but he's so small. I mean, he doesn't have the body to push off a linebacker or a big defensive back. So I think it'd be cool to have another really big weapon on the outside or even like a really big tight end that's really athletic. But once again, if the offensive line doesn't get settled, Dak can't throw the ball. So I really think they need to go offensive line as their number one. But we'll see what they do. The defensive side, though, they need somebody other than Micah because while he's amazing, he can only do so much. They just re-signed Odigizua, which I thought was a wonderful re-sign. He's been the most disruptive player outside of Micah on the front seven that we've had in a very long time. So I'm very pleased to see him back. But for defensive back, I mean, it's really dealer's choice at this point. So that's why I truly believe for this particular draft, I think it's best available. Because we have so many pressing needs that I don't think it really matters what they pick as long as it's a blue chip, badass person that can come out of the gate starting.
Yeah, you mentioned linebacker. Didn't Vander retire recently? So,
oh yeah, him made out of glass.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he retired. We had Eric Kendrick for the last 2 seasons, but he's been banged up a little bit as well. And then we had, he's a defensive lineman, Sam Williams. He got hurt, tore his ACL, and then Overshone got hurt, tore his ACL and MCL. And then we got Marquise Bell, who's up and coming. So we got some young guys that are showing some promise, but we are getting so disrupted by injury in what seems like every position group that we don't get a chance to see any of the younger guys really step up and show us what they can do because then they just don't have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's see. I really wish Ron was here for this segment because he's got some good takes on the draft. We talked about Ashton Genty earlier on, and he will not likely be available at 24. I say that, I don't know. It's so interesting with the running back situation and what the landscape has become because there's only 3 or 4 backs in the league right now that you're like, okay, that's a game-changing back. It's Saquon, it's Derrick Henry. Who else are those marquee, amazing running backs?
San Francisco's guy.
Not a bunch.
Yeah.
CMC can't stay healthy.
No.
He cannot stay healthy. Christian McCaffrey is incredible to watch whenever he's healthy, but that dude cannot stay healthy. I think that's why, because the running back position traditionally is also a bruiser position that has the most contact on every single play. Doesn't matter if they're on the ball or off the ball, they're taking some sort of hit. And so that's why I'm not opposed to what the Cowboys are doing right now with running back by committee because we've done it in the past. The running back by committee has worked in the past. It's not always optional because if someone does get hurt, especially if you're Ezekiel Elliott or your bigger name back, then you have some problems. But I don't know. There's just too much to try to fix. And because they've done so little in the offseason up to this point, I think the draft board is just so freaking wide open that it doesn't matter what they do.
Well, let's hope it doesn't matter.
In here.
They could always draft another Taco.
We've had such bad luck with that defensive end position because Taco Charlton, I mean, yeah, he checked all the boxes. He was big, he was long, he was fast, he was strong, but dude could play football. Then Charles Tapper several years ago out of OU, same thing. Big guy, strong guy, fast guy on the edge. Did not translate. Funny story, actually. I'll tell a Charles Tapper story real quick. So in my old neighborhood in Frisco, I just picked up the kid from school or after school care. I don't remember what it was, but I'm driving in, pull to the neighborhood, and I see a cell phone on the ground. And I'm like, oh shit, bet somebody wants that. So I pull over, I grab it, I go home. Somebody calls it. I'm trying to get into it, but it's of course got a passcode, so I can't. Someone calls it and I answer it and they FaceTime me. They're like, hey, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm Brandon Cooley. I found this phone on the street. I live on this street. Come grab it. They're like, all right, cool. So Charles Tapper comes down the road. He lives in the house right down the street in my neighborhood. And he brings his little German Shepherd puppy.
Oh, nice.
And so we chat for a little while. He's pretty nice. Takes his phone, says thank you, walks away. And it's good. Now, fast forward, I don't know, a year, I guess. And it's a colder night. It's, around Christmas time or whatever. And I'm outside. I don't know if I was putting up Christmas lights. I don't remember what the case was. Doesn't really matter. But this German Shepherd dog walks up to my house. And so it's got a leash and a collar. So clearly it was being walked or it was tied up somewhere and got off. And so I took it inside, put it in my backyard. So I happened to exchange numbers with Tapper. And so I texted him and I was like, hey, man, is your dog loose? He's like, yeah, he is. You haven't? I'm like, actually, I do. Come over to the house. So I saved his phone and his dog. The second time, the dog didn't say thank you the second time. I was a little annoyed, but that's okay. Overall, he was a pretty nice guy. So,
nice.
All right. Now that anecdotal story is over, let's shift gears again. Let's move on to the Dallas Mavericks. Are you a big pro basketball fan?
I always try to get into it. It's funny. I'm a big fan of the Mavs. But, it's hard to get involved with the team that keeps giving away the good guys.
Yeah.
I did go see some G League stuff this week, and I was hoping to see Anthony Davis, but no. So.
They'd already moved him up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was probably the biggest news of this week was Anthony Davis coming back into the fold. Ron and I have talked ad nauseum about the Mavericks so far. That's what initially started this entire podcast was the Luka trade. And just our commiseration as lifelong fans to get rid of, a generational talent. But we're not going to talk about that because we've talked entirely too much about the sadness. So we've seen what's happened since the Luka trade. We've seen what appears to be a curse that's been cast over this team from the trade and stock that we got back, the Anthony Davis immediate injury, PJ, Gafford. Everybody getting hurt, like everybody's getting hurt. And we got to a point where we almost had to forfeit a game because we weren't going to have 8 people to fill the court. So that fortunately didn't happen. But Ron and I both agreed, you know what? It's team tank. There's no reason at this point. Don't bring anybody back. We don't have any salary cap to buy anybody to rent a player. We can't bring anybody up from the G League because we don't have cap space for that. So let's just run this as thin as we can. Let the people that are hurt get better. Kyrie also being one of those big injuries that's out for the season and quite a bit probably out through next season. Mm-hmm. So the question is, do we tank? Because when all of this was really starting to come to a negative head from what the team was doing, we had dropped to the 10 seed, which is the last spot for a play-in. Now we are in the 11 seed, which was out the play-in, which I'm all for, personally. I don't want the Mavs to try to do anything in the playoffs because I'd rather everybody just sit on their ass, get healthy, and let's start fresh for next year. Hopefully get a good draft pick.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to see because right?
He played 3 quarters. 3 quarters and got hurt.
And now he's just back. So, and with a handful of games left, does it even make sense to try to put the team together, right?
Yeah.
So, because you don't know how they're going to interact together. You don't know if they're going to be great players. And, Kyrie out. what does the team even look like, to be honest with you? So,
Well, the team doesn't look like much. I mean, our number one point guard right now is Spencer Dinwiddie, who, for all efforts, has been putting on one hell of a show every night. He has been handling the ball well. He's been scoring lots of points. I think he's had 2 games now, 30-plus points. Welcome back, Ron. We're talking about the Mavs. Good timing. I know you missed out on draft talk, so if we need to circle back to that, we certainly can. But right now, we're on the Mavericks, and Anthony Davis' return. Do the Mavs continue to tank? PJ, Gafford, Davis, all back in the lineup. Gafford got gone in the game last night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was confused because I saw him high five Anthony Davis on the court whenever he dunked it, but I went look at the box score and Gafford's name wasn't listed. So I went back and watched the clip, and sure enough, I saw Gafford. I saw AD. So it was the Nets. I confirmed it was against the Nets. So I was very confused.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, we've seen all kinds of reports come out, Bill, that seem to be that there's some conflict within the organization about bringing AD back. The narrative that's being spun is that the Mavericks organization wanted him to continue to sit out, but he's adamant on returning to the lineup and making a playoff run. So, I don't know, read that as you will. I mean, it's just a net, right? So we had finally surpassed the Suns on our way to the bottom of the West standings, and Portland and San Antonio were within striking distance. So our draft pick was looking better and better, and now it's in doubt because honestly, this team with AD and Gafford back is better than the Suns. They just flat out are. The Mavericks actually have a way easier schedule than Phoenix to close out the season. So, I mean, you can't help but to think that right now the Mavericks are the favorite to take that final play-in spot. And the expectation is that will happen. We will move down in the draft a couple spots. So we'll end up in 15, 16, somewhere around there. When we had a real shot at drafting at 9 or 10, to me, that's devastating for an organization that doesn't have a lot of high picks coming up in the next few seasons, next 4 or 5 years, actually. So it just continues. Like, this is just another blow to Mavs fans. What can you say at this point? It's just piling on, it feels like to me.
Yeah, I got to double check this, but I'm pretty sure that the next time we control our first round pick is in the 2032 season.
I think that's right.
Which is absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, to your point, so we're 35 and 37. The Suns have the same record, and the Kings are at 35 and 36. So we have a chance to jump to the 9 seed, potentially. And then, you know, the Blazers, the Spurs, the Pelicans, the Jazz. I mean, Jazz are eliminated, I believe. I think they're officially out now. Well, I don't see much else circling around in the bottom 5 teams here. At this point, it looks like we're going to get a play-in spot. I mean, there's a really good chance. So the question is, do we go for that? Do we go for a play-in and see what happens? Does this team have the offensive firepower and any sort of depth to make a run?
I don't know, man. I mean, okay. So I'm not 100% clear on the rules, but if you've been at 9 or 10, that means what? You have to win 2 play-in games on the road to advance to the first round. So the other play-in teams right now are, I'm going to say, and the LA Clippers. Yes. That's a tough road for those teams. You know, especially if Kawhi is healthy, I think are significantly better than the Mavericks. And then that you're against Houston or Oklahoma City. So Oklahoma City have no chance. Houston's interesting because they're such a young team. They don't really have a bona fide superstar and they're inexperienced, right? So I can see people talk themselves into series against Houston. We have a shot, right? We have a puncher's chance. You know, we can pull an upset at an underdog. If it's Denver, if Denver takes the 2 seed and if the Lakers take the 2 seed, game on. I hope to God that happens. So I can see you talking yourself into it. But yeah, ultimately, I think it's a 50-50 shot to get out of the play-in. If it's the Clippers, I think the Timberwolves kick your ass, honestly, is the way I see it. You know, like you said, Spencer Dinwiddie, he's balling out. He balled out Friday when I was watching him. So did PJ. I was asking myself, you know, where was this PJ in the finals? Where was this Spencer in the conference finals a couple years ago? No, but of course, when you don't need to win games, they turn into superstars. So that's the way. What's your confidence level? Do you think they're gonna What's your percentage odds on them getting into the first round?
My percentage odds for playing right now are probably 75-25 that they will. Getting into the first round, I'm gonna flip that. I'm gonna say 25-75 that we'll get to the first round.
I was gonna say
I don't think we're gonna get through the play-in. I just don't. 'Cause on the road, I mean, I just don't see it happening. I've also been sticking to this same mentality for the last several weeks, and I don't want to switch yet. Now, we'll see what happens as these next few games go. Like if Davis comes back in and just is a thunderous change to the culture of this team, and we see them play in a way that we haven't since Luka was here, then I may change my tune. But for right now, I'm saying likelihood of getting the play-in, not likelihood of getting to the first round.
agreed. I also want to say that I really could not care less right now about Mavericks basketball. I'm pretty much tuned in. I'm game Friday because I'm playing out my season tickets, but I have zero investment. Right, I'm just trying to get to the off season and trying to get there and process things and decide what happens next year. But I'm pretty much tuned out. I do want to shout out something you said. Maybe it's podcast 1 or 2. I remember we were talking to Max Christie. And you said basically he was going to fall off a cliff. And so I remember pushing back a little bit. I was like, he can't, but I think I said he'll be a 40% 3-and-D guy. No, you were right. He has been absolutely terrible for a good while now. He turned back into a pumpkin, and it's unfortunate. For a while, they were calling it the Max Christie trade, as he went on and looked like the small forward of Dirk for a week or two. That has reversed. So he is now I don't know what he is, right? He's kind of a down one step below maybe a Dorian. He's still a good defender, but man, offense it's been rough to watch.
Yeah, I forgot that we had that conversation. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny, when you look at accrual of stats over time for any player, players are what they are. They play within themselves. Every now and then they play outside of themselves. Max Christie, I think, was a product of his play was a product of a change of scenery, and him being pissed off that the Lakers got rid of him for Luka. Started firing in his pants, and he's like, you know what? I'll show them what they're going to miss out on. But yeah, he came back down to earth, and now here we are.
I'll say this though, there's a little bit of it that I do think, and I think we've seen this across the board with the Mavs. Since Kyrie went out, it's been harder to generate offense, right? You don't have the floor spacer, you don't have the ball handling, the creating on offense. So that has had an effect on it. So that gives us a little bit of hope for next year, but that's still not a reason to fall off a cliff this badly. So, that part's been unfortunate to see, along with some of the regression that we've seen of other players on the squad, like Jaden Hardy, who's damn near unplayable. And then, we lost our other point guard, Dante Exum. Yeah, those pieces have not been encouraging over the past few weeks, to say the least.
No, Brad, sorry, what would you like to add to this?
Well, to roll back to the beginning, what about just, the team just coming back together right now? Even if they made it somehow into the first round, how far are they going to get, right? So,
yeah, well, and speaking of just teams and how they're playing, I know we've tried not to talk about Luka, but have y'all seen his stats? He's already broken some records for the Lakers. I think Ron, I sent you something that he was the fastest to 15 3-point made shots in Lakers history, or the youngest, I guess. He's averaging 38-8. That is his main line in the last 14 games, which is pretty astounding. But the Lakers have lost their last 3. They are on a bit of a skid, and they do look a little bit lost, which has been kind of fun to watch. But at the same time, I want my boy Luka to win. So, but anything else on the Mavs or basketball that we need to talk about before we shift gears from the Stars?
Not a whole lot. I do think, to follow up on your Lakers point, I've been watching quite a bit of Luka. He found his shot. That's really what happened. He has been money from the 3-point line. I think the other night he had 7 threes in the first half or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what changed his game around. The Lakers as a team, though, they are really light on depth and they have no size and a defensive team. So I think it is going to be hard for them to, for a while, world beaters, right? And I think this is an NBA's team or show that now they have some big flaws. They have some fatal flaws as a team, and it's not going to be a cakewalk, going through I definitely don't think we can consider them a favorite. I don't think in Denver, I don't think they're better than OKC. But Luka is a player. He's found his place on the team. They're using him as creator. He's initiating all of the offense. And he's found it. So, this was going to happen, right? We all knew the first, that while everybody else was panicking, we were like, it's just going to take a little bit of time. And so that's what happened, right? Now he's back to being Luka, and we're missing out.
Indeed we are. But you know what? That's okay. All right. So let's move to some Dallas Stars talk. It's a fun time to be a Dallas Stars fan. A really, really fun time. Brad, are you off?
I do like hockey. So a lot of my cousins played.
Okay, wonderful. So this most recent win against Minnesota was an absolute stonewall shutdown performance by Ottinger. He had 32 shots on goal on him, and he stopped every single one. It was a 3-0 win by the Stars, and it was so much fun to watch because it didn't matter what the Wild tried to do. Dallas had an answer for everything, and they looked amazing. And as we get down to the end, I think I read a stat that this was the 8th straight home game win for the Stars, which I think is great, which we need home ice for the playoffs. We have to, because right now we look nothing short of unstoppable here at home. Who wants to jump in?
No, well,
nobody. Okay.
I love watching Ottinger. I've always loved it when he plays well. The team is a lot better when it's just hands down lockdown defense. And my cousin played goalie, so I'm always about the goalies. So there we go.
All right. Thanks so much.
One storyline I've heard a lot of talk about is how it affects the team, because I saw that they were preparing to play the first round without Heiskanen, and they're saying it might take him a little bit longer to return. So just curious, if that, in your mind, does that do anything to the Stars' chances of advancing in the postseason?
I mean, it will, but Sagan allegedly should be back for the first round of the playoffs. So that'll at least be some sort of decent trade-off. But our offense has been great. It could certainly be better. Earlier in the season, we had a lot of really big one-sided blowouts. And so there's been a lot more overtime, shootout, single, score wins that we've had. And we've also lost a bunch of tight ones. Most of our losses recently have been tight losses. So it's going to affect us because he's a great player. But I really think that even without him, this team, especially with the moves we made at the trade deadline, they're just so much fun to watch. But we need home ice for the playoffs. That's really all I care about.
I was watching one game last week, and there was some talk about, figure out, at least not yet, closing lineup, power play line is. That in the past few games, because, obviously things have changed a little bit. You make a giant midseason trade, you have to figure out how to integrate and what, who plays well with each other. Has that looked better to you in the past few games? Because, it looked a little bit weird.
I don't think I can speak intelligibly to that. How many power plays we had in the last week or last 4 games? Because I don't have that. Someone look that up. Last 10 games.
This is great draft night coverage of us Googling stats.
Because that's the beauty of the post-production. Is you can go in and
I think I'm going to leave this in, man. I think that people want to see us Google stats.
Look, I can remember a lot. I can remember a whole lot. I can't remember everything. Power plays the last 10 games, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 losses, 6 and 4 over the last 10 games with our opportunity. Not bad. Not bad. I would prefer that to be a little bit better, but let's look at those losses: 2-3, 3-4, 1-4. Winnipeg, absolutely kicked our ass, and then Edmonton 5-4. 1 point losses with the exception of one. All the wins 3-2. We beat Vancouver 4-1, 3-2, and then the shutout last night. So, it's all been tight. So we've either got to lock up a little bit better on defense, which Ottinger's playing about at the goalie, but he can't play. So the offense does have to get a little. There's been a lot of good play by Harley. He's I had a lot of really great late game shots, which have helped out a whole lot. But they've got to do something better offensively. What I said, offense needs to be a little bit more productive. We've got to get a bigger score lead in each game. It's made me feel a little bit better because given the fact that every game's been basically decided by one goal, that makes really fun hockey. It makes very scary playoff hockey.
Agreed. I think they have a couple big games this week, standings wise, if I remember correctly. And I think they had at least one game. I think it's tomorrow that's nationally televised. So I'm excited about that. Love those games. I'll be tuned in. I think it's versus the Oilers. What's today?
Today is the 25th.
The 25th.
So tomorrow, we got Stars Oilers, 9 p.m. on TNT. So should be a good one. I think this weekend there's another game or two against some good teams. So playoff hunt is on. It's a fun time of the year. Yeah, excited.
Yeah, I think part of my problem over here is I've got 74,000 tabs open. And I have not closed out of anything in a while, and I haven't restarted the computer in a while, so that's on me. So I'm closing out of some stuff right now, and hopefully let my computer run a little bit more smoothly.
You pulled a me.
I did, and I'm not proud of this. This is not a good move for me.
I didn't know pulling her on was such a disappointing thing to do.
Not always. If it's about doing good in tech services, it's a great thing. Tech issues on the computer, not so much.
Do we want to? I guess we should hit the Rangers real quick.
Yeah, let's touch the Rangers a little bit.
Okay. So on my side, I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of question marks around pitching as we start the season. So do you guys know what the lineup's going to look like now?
No, so the final roster has not been set. We just know what the active roster looks like, but we don't necessarily know what the lineup is. Eovaldi is probably going to be opening day starter. That would be my guess. Could be DeGrom, but either one of those I'm fine with. Either one I'm good with, but I really love our rotation. I think between Eovaldi, DeGrom, and Gray, those three guys right there are going to get a lot of really good quality starts. They're going to do a really good job getting some good hard-fought wins. I think the rest of the lineup is strong, not amazing, but I think we've got enough in the top three to really make a statement in the pitching game.
I agree 100%. I actually really like the rest of the rotation too, because you guys is Leiter in his second year? I know he's a top draft pick a few years back.
Yeah, second and third year.
Yes. And so he has the pedigree. And so I believe he's going to take one of the back end spots on the rotation. And I think Kumar Rocker is getting the other one. So that's a really nice top five there, right? So joining Gray, DeGrom, and Baldy, that's a really solid rotation. That's I think you have confidence playing that out, at least for the first part of the season. So we never know how injuries are gonna play out. Obviously, DeGrom's always a risk. So,
risk.
But I mean, right now it looks like everything's set for them to come in with that being the pitching staff. So I mean, we touched this a little bit when we did the Astros preview, but it was pretty clear to us, and we talked about this a little bit, was that right now the Rangers pitching staff, as far as starters, far outclasses anybody else in the division. So as always, the question is, will that hold? But right now, they're up there as far as class of the AL. So that's got to be exciting for Rangers fans.
Well, even if our pitchers are given 3, 4, even 5 ERA on average, while that's not ideal, I think there's enough offensive firepower between Seager, Simeon, and Jonheim, and just the rest of the line. This is stout with bats. So I think as long as the offense does what I think they should do, even with moderate to above average pitching, we're still going to be fine.
Yeah, that was the story.
Yeah, I mean, my question was John Gray. right? Are we certain about him? Because he was the only one that I knew had some lingering stuff over the last few weeks.
We'll see. I mean, opening day is 5 days away? So we'll see him in 8 days, most likely. The headline that I was shocked by for the Rangers, I think it was just announced either today or late yesterday, is that Evan Carter got assigned to AAA. He did not make the active roster, which I thought kind of blew my mind because he was such an electric left fielder and he was so much fun around the bases once he got on. So I didn't read the article. I didn't get a chance to see it all. I happened to see it when I was prepping right before the show. But that was kind of a question mark for me as to what happened there because he's so good. But we've got a lot of really good talent on his team. So maybe they just decided to develop him a little bit longer, let him spend some time in AAA and then call him up if there's injury.
I had seen that too, and I was also shocked because, I mean, not only was he a big part of the last 2 years from an offensive standpoint, but he also has the pedigree, right? He was a first-round pick. He was the class of the Rangers farm system. I was shocked too. I knew I'd heard something that he had struggled a little bit during spring training, but for that to get you sent to AAA, to me, is shocking. I don't know if I've ever seen that. I don't know if I have a good comparison for somebody that was at his level with his pedigree, with his history, for that to happen at this stage in his career. I don't think I've ever seen that. So I don't know what you make of that.
Yeah, there's got to be more to it. Like I said, I'll do some more digging, take a look at it, but it should be fine. Now, we got to move on quickly from this. So this will be the last thing I ask about the Rangers, and then we're going to let this become the Brad Hogan show so we can talk about all about March Madness and dedicate some good time there. But does this team, from a starting rotation and offensive production standpoint, can this team be a World Series contender?
Yes. 100% yes.
So, okay.
For those people that didn't, I got the dog barking. All right, you take this thing.
Yeah, I think Ron's absolutely right. The story 2 years ago, everything just worked. The bats were on it, right? And then last year, the bats went away. There was a lot of issues with injuries in the pitching staff. And this year, just like you guys said, we're looking at a healthy, strong pitching group. And the bats so far at spring training are there. So I think they've got everything they need to make the run deep.
I agree. I think that this is a great year to have a deep run in the playoffs and at least get to the championship series. Maybe not make it all the way to the World Series, but I definitely think we get a chance to make a championship series run, which is really exciting because if this continues and the Stars do incredible and they make a deep run and the Rangers do incredible and they make a deep run, the Cowboys, of course, we know what's going to happen there. And the Mavericks, at this point don't look like they got a shot. But even if 50% of our professional sports teams here are in the conversation of a championship, that's a pretty damn good year as a sports fan. So I can live with that. But that's enough on that. The main reason why Brad the Man Hogan is here is because he is our March Madness NCAA basketball expert. So the show is yours. I'm going to have very little to add here because I will be the first to say I'm not a huge NCAA guy. You tell me what's going on.
Awesome. Well,
show's yours right now.
I love March Madness. I think someone said this is the greatest 4 days stretch, Wednesday through Sunday last week. And for me, it definitely is. I just get too excited about it. It's a lot of fun and, an excuse not to work at all. And you just have a lot of fun. I graduated Michigan State in 1997. They won the national championship in 2000. In 2000, I was submerged under the ocean in my submarine. Michigan State won the championship. My captain held that message and told the entire crew to tell me that Michigan State lost. He held it for 3 days.
What an asshole.
It took 3 days. 3 days later at dinner, he's like, oh, by the way, your team won. And, at that point, I was just, defeated. So, and we're looking at, 2025 now, and Michigan State is 2 seed, about ranked 8th in the nation. And they are still alive in the Sweet 16. Tom Izzo's the best coach there is left in college basketball. So I'm looking at, hopefully, a run to the finish. But the real story this year, I think, is going to be the NIL and the impact of the super conferences, right? Because when you look at the way things progress through the first 4 days, we always talk about bracket busters and the biggest upsets. And there were only two big upsets, right? There's two 5-12 matchups. And from what I'm reading, most people think one of them wasn't even seeded correctly, so it wasn't really an upset, right? So we're looking at one real upset and a pretty standard fare. Everyone who won or was supposed to win won. You would think that takes some of the excitement away, but the college teams at the top right now, the top 8, and especially the top 4, are just light years ahead of everybody else right now. They're very good teams. That Houston game, was it Sunday night? Saturday night was just one of the best I've seen in a while. To see teams like Gonzaga go deep talent-wise and play up to some strong contenders, that was just college basketball. That's why I like it. You get one or two teams with one or two people that can just alter the game. Cooper Flag and Duke, everyone's talking about him for good reason. So, we have the top 4 teams right now: Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Houston. I'm most excited about Houston.
So what are your opinions on who's going to be the final 2
Yeah, I think
for the championship?
Duke and Houston both have the best chance to get far. I want Houston to win. Auburn is the number 1 seed, and they were ranked number 1, but they lost a couple times going into the tournament, and so I don't think they're running as hot as maybe Houston. And now Duke, with the injury to Cooper Flag right at the end of the season, everyone was like, "Oh, they're not going to do anything." But surprisingly, he was healthy when the tournament started, and he is just dominating. So
yeah, he
is.
I cannot wait for him to get to the pros and see what he can do in the big leagues, because he is fun to watch.
The final part that we'll get to eventually is like, who's one and done this year, and I think he'll probably be one of them, right? So, but it's interesting to see because this is like the second year, or the real year that NIL's taking flight, and we saw it affect college football. People move fast now for the money. The mid majors are just hurt with the big Power 5 conferences with the money and the experience to put together good NIL programs have swooped up all the talent. It shows. The top teams are the top teams. They're hard to beat this year. There were no upsets, so to speak. So, the talent's not there in the mid majors. So those seeded less than 10 aren't doing so well, right? I think Arkansas might be the highest ranked one, or lowest ranked, however you want to look at it, right? It's backwards. But that's because they have Calipari, right?
Right. So what is your opinion on NIL and players being able to get paid, and what that does for the landscape of college sports? What's your opinion there?
Discussion. I think they've always needed to be paid. But when they turned on NIL, they just basically said, "Hey, everyone's SMU, go for it." We killed SMU in the 80s for just this sort of thing. And they turned it on and then put in rules, right? So it's just like the local car dealerships free to give free jobs again, right? So you don't really know what's going to happen. And every time the NCAA tries to put a rule in place, everyone's like, no, or not at all. So I think it's still going to take a couple of years to play out and see how it goes. I think in the interim, we're probably going to end up with a couple of years like this, both in football and in basketball, the money sports, where the big teams, the big names, and now the big conferences dominate, right? Which, as a Big Ten fan, doesn't hurt me too much.
Yep.
But if you're football and you're an ACC fan, it's not so good.
Maybe.
But this, one of the coolest stories I think this year is the local story for SMU, right? SMU didn't make the tournament, but they had a huge impact on it. They fired their coach at the end of last year and hired somebody from USC, who then hired the Arkansas coach, who picked up the UK coach, and the UK picked up the BYU coach. Well, now Arkansas, Kentucky, and BYU are all in the Sweet 16s with coaches for the first new year, right? And that's wouldn't have saw that before NIL, right?
Right, exactly. So that's clearly already having rippling effects in its short time.
Getting players to be able to move and play immediately, and being able to entice them with money to make them move. Used to be a coach had control over his team, and people couldn't leave, or if they left, they had to wait a year, right? So now Calipari moved, and he's immediately put together a team he wanted. Kind of like Dion was able to do when he went to Colorado State, right?
Correct.
That's a direct impact of NIL, and as the lawyer in me, changes in the law, right? So that's pretty cool to see.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily the letter of the law, it's how the law can be
and
applied,
that's
right?
even a better example, like you said, of the law, because we wrote a law that said, or NCAA said, no professional sports, right? Well, now that's just like, well, you can, but nobody knows how that's going to be interpreted. So we have 3 or 4 years just to feel it out, and it's going to be an odd thing to see what happens, right?
Any other major March Madness things you want to talk about before we close this show down for the day?
Well, yep. The first 4 days are always the most fun in college sports, if you ask me, period. But we've got 2 more weeks, and we're going to have some really good basketball. So if you haven't watched yet, get back into it and watch it.
Where's your go-to place to watch
I have been
the
watching
tournament?
Shark, and they are awesome for this sort of thing. Hundreds of TVs, it seems like, in there.
I'm so sorry.
Shark Tank
You
in Plano.
you
right?
broke up.
We do
Where
a bunch
did you
of our
say?
networking there. Oh, thank you. I always do that wrong. Shark Club. Yeah, that's
Shark
great.
Club. Shark Club.
Yeah, and
I forget the name of the Thursday chapter. Yeah, Shark Club.
There's awesome. They help us out, and I've had a lot of fun just watching basketball there.
No, I'll give a big shout out to Shark Club. It's at Parkwood and 121 right there in Plano. And yeah, they've got so many TVs. The food's great. The drinks are great. The service staff is fantastic. Definitely endorse them. They're also a big supporter of Master Networks. You've got several chapters that meet there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So they're great supporters. So we definitely want to support them. So anybody listening, if you've never been, go. If you have been, go again and go drink all the delicious beer. All right. Any Cinderellas still in play, or is it all the teams everybody thought?
The lowest seed one was Arkansas at 11. So we're just looking at, it'll be fun, but it won't be as exciting as some years. Yep.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay, because it's still fun to watch. All right, we're fantastic. Well, any final thoughts? Man, no problem, Brad. I'm really glad that you're able to come on, and I threw this at you super last minute yesterday, so I appreciate your flexibility in getting on. I'll go ahead and just wrap up then, as everybody can maybe see, Ron is missing in action as he's still dealing with HVAC problems at his house. So everybody, please pray for him that, today's the hottest day of the year so far, and it's the one day he's without cool air. So that really freaking sucks. Brad, thank you once again for coming on, being an amazing guest and lending your expertise and knowledge towards March Madness, and of course, all the other takes that you gave for all the other topics today. Thank you so much to all of our listeners for tuning in. I'll be getting these up on all of our platforms soon enough, so be on Spotify, and then we'll have all the shorts, reels, and everything else on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. So please follow us and you there. Oh, also on YouTube. But other than that, next week, Ron said he wants to dive heavily into golf. We're, of course, going to follow back up with March Madness. So we'll talk some more about that. All the other news for Cowboys, Stars, Mavs, we're going to touch on all that. Anything exciting, we may have to bring Severance back into the fold since that season 2 is now over. What a weird show that is, but it's so well written. But other than that, I think we're done for the day. So everybody, please come back next week for cold beer and hot takes. For Brad, Ron, and myself, this was Draft Night. And as always, next round's on us.